So I know I'm about a week late on this one because the second episode of House of the Dragon season 2 has just come out. But I wanted to go over the one thing about the first episode of the second season that most people seem to be wrapped up with talking about, which is the blood and cheese scene or the blood and cheese sequence at the end of the first episode. So for a bit of context, everyone that had read the books, myself included, or the book Fire and Blood that this show's based on, they knew that, well, the expectation was that this scene was going to be really brutal, or this sequence was going to be really brutal and really impactful in a way that would have been comparable to the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. Or the Reigns of Castamere episode. So the main complaint that's come out since this episode aired was the fact that, at a surface level, the discussion seemed to most people, particularly people that hadn't read the book, like the scene wasn't brutal enough, or the scene it just wasn't hardcore enough, or it didn't have the real psychological impact the way that the Red Wedding did. There's a number of reasons why I think they probably had to scale it back. I would say chief amongst them would be just the age of the actors, so the child actors. The characters that this is based around in the book is the two little kids that are around the age of 6, and then an even younger kid that's the youngest sibling, Maylor, who's 2 in the book, I'm pretty sure. And they completely omitted him from this sequence totally, the youngest sibling, the 2-year-old. And so they made basically a choice to not have that third sibling in the scene, but that has quite an impact on changing sort of the psychological impact that the scene has, because basically the way the scene in the TV show goes is Blood and Cheese are these 2 assassins that sneak around the castle of King's Landing, and they make it into the Queen's quarters under the orders of Daemon Targaryen as like a revenge assassination for Jace dying in the first season. So they're ordered to go in there, and basically the direction they're given is a son for a son. So basically go and murder one of the king's sons. The reason this is so impactful in the book, obviously just the killing of, the king or the queen's child is going to be pretty impactful. But the reason it's so impactful in the book is because what Blood and Cheese do is they go in there, they strangle the handmaid, I believe it is, and then the queen comes in with her 3 small children, and they hold a knife to the throat of both of the boys, and they tell her to choose which one she wants to be. Just choose which one's going to get it. One of you's going to get it. There's no getting out of it. But you choose which of the boys is going to get it. And so she pleads for her life and begs for her life, and then I think they threaten to rape her or rape the third child, the daughter or whatever. And they make it explicitly clear to her, like, you're going to have to choose one of them. So the reason the part of the book is so impactful isn't just because there's killing of kids, because kids die throughout all of the books, Fire and Blood, A Song of Ice and Fire, the whole thing. The reason it's so impactful is that they give her a choice and they say, choose which one of the boys is going to cop it. And she, after a lot of hysterics and everything, makes a choice of the younger one, of Maylor. Am I remembering that right? Yeah, she makes a choice of one of the boys. It doesn't really matter, but she makes a choice of one of the boys. She chooses the youngest one because the oldest one is obviously the heir to the throne. She chooses the younger one for him to cop it, and the assassin, I believe it's Blood, whispers in the boy's ear. He says, "Do you hear that, lad? Your mummy wants you dead." And then the other assassin kills the other boy. So it's like it's doubly fucked up in the sense that she chooses which one is going to cop it, and then they just with one swing behead the other child, and then that kid has to live with not only obviously seeing their sibling get beheaded, but also knowing for the rest of their life the fact that their mother chose in that moment for him to cop it. So it's not just the fact of killing a son or sort of the eye for an eye thing. It's the most fucked up part of it is the choice that she's presented with and being forced to choose. Whereas the way that it's presented in the TV show, it just comes down to a question of well, it's supposed to be a son for a son, and because they omit having male or the younger child, they just have a son and a daughter that are around that like 5 or 6 year old mark, and the only conflict really comes from just trying to, because they're both Targaryen, so they got long blonde hair. The only real conflict comes from trying to figure out which one is the male, which is not really it's kind of almost boring. Like, it just seems procedural in the TV show. It's not I know that might sound callous because you're literally talking about a scene where a child dies, but it just definitely, I think the writers of the show, I think they could have somehow done it in a way that they, edit it so that the children, because I know a lot of the restrictions were around how young the children are depicted in the books, and you just can't have kids that little and actually A, have them in fucked up scenes like that, or B, even really give them direction when they're that little. They don't even know what acting is or what they're doing. So the choice of not having the second boy in the scene just made it a choice between two similar looking siblings. One's a boy, one's a girl. And they're just presented with the thing of, oh, well, which one's the boy? We just need to figure out which one's the boy. Yep, that one's the boy. Oh, I think she's bullshitting. Nah, I reckon she's not bullshitting. And it's all obviously very callous as well. But even one of the I think it's blood in the scene, or cheese in the scene, even just says, like, just check for a cock, like, as in check like, if we're so stressed about making sure we carry out the son for a son part of this assassination contract or whatever you'd call it, just physically check somehow and make sure which one's a boy. It's like, it seems like a weird moment of, like, we don't want to be indecent around these children when we're about to behead one of them. I don't know. It's still impactful in terms of the sound design. That's what everyone's talking about, with it cutting away, and her just being able to walk out and carry her other child out while they have, like, really grisly, gruesome, like, beheading sounds or whatever it is of the other child. But I don't know. It's just, and like, her reaction is weird as well. And everyone's obviously, the two things everyone's saying is, oh, well, she's clearly being portrayed as being autistic or some flavor of, like, neurodivergence or whatever you want to call it. So, and the fact that she's also in shock. So she's not, having a proper reaction to what she's seeing. But I don't know. And her just, like, there's just so many, like, the more you dig, the more it just seems like there's, like, her going straight into Alicent's quarters, just walking in, the door's not locked, and Alicent and Kristen Cole are banging, and then she just sits down on the floor and says they killed the boy in sort of this, like, autistic in shock kind of weird way, and then it cuts to Alicent's face as the last shot of the episode. And Alicent just has, like, this shocked, like, look on her face. But she has this shocked look on her face like she gets what's going on immediately. Whereas the real reaction would be like, okay, why have you just burst in here? What do you mean by they killed the boy? I need more information or more context, rather than to just stare and look shocked into the camera lens to end the episode. It's just, I don't know. Like, there's so many things the criticism that everyone's saying in opposition to, like, saying that the scene or the sequence is fine, everyone's saying, oh, you guys are all fucked up, you didn't, the way they depicted a child's death wasn't fucked up enough for you, it didn't live up to the book, so you didn't, and it's not about the gruesomeness or the actual visceral violence of the scene or anything. I don't think anyone that with half a brain has a problem with that. There's obviously very hard limits to what you can do with child actors. The problem is that the most horrifying part of this whole sequence is the choice, and the choice she's forced to make, and then the way they flip it on her so that they just choose the other child anyway. So it's just like, and like Allison's door being unlocked, or she's just banging Sir Kristen Cole, and like, I don't know, it's just, it's the problem isn't that it wasn't fucked up enough. The problem is that I think it missed the core psychological impact of why that was such a big moment in the book for all the readers. So, but apart from that, I'm definitely not being a hater on the show as a whole. It's still definitely surpassing everyone's expectations after, the end of Game of Thrones and how that all went. So, yeah, hopefully the rest of the season stays strong. It definitely, I feel like, could have been done better, but it is what it is. I definitely agree with the people saying it could have lived up on the same level of impact as something like the Red Wedding had, but just in its own different way, not with the amount of blood and guts that the Red Wedding had, but just more the shock factor or the complete, just the narrative left turn that something like the Red Wedding was. This was in that same stratosphere of something that's just so impactful that you can't help but remember it. But I don't know. We got what we got. Hopefully the season stays good. And I might do a review of the next episode if there's anything really worth talking about. But this was the main thing that came out of the first episode that everyone was sort of losing their mind over.